In this video, we'll show you how to rebuild a Horton S or HTS type fan clutch using a Kitmaster's 7500 HP or 9500 HP rebuild kit. The process for installing a 7500 HP and 9500 HP kit are exactly the same. The only difference between the two is that a 7500 HP uses 7.5 inch friction material and a 9500 HP uses 9.5 inch friction material. Both sizes of friction materials and friction plates install in the same way. The technician assisting me today is Joe. Begin by removing the air chamber screws using a T30 Torx bit. When all 8 air chamber screws have been removed, you can remove the friction plate and air chamber together. If your fan clutch has only 6 air chamber screws, you will need to use kit number 9506 HP. Separate the air chamber or nose cone from the friction plate. You can discard the friction plate, but you need to save the air chamber as part of the fan clutch core that you will rebuild. Remove the O-ring from the inside of the air chamber and discard the O-ring. Remove the face seal from the air chamber using a 5/8 socket. You can discard both the O-ring and the face seal, but save the air chamber. Next, remove the friction material using a T25 Torx bit. You can discard the friction material and screws. Now remove the snap ring located inside and below the lock nut using a snap ring pliers. Discard the snap ring. Next, remove the air cartridge assembly by applying a small blast of shop air to the fan clutch. Some very old air cartridges are made of brass. If so, it may also have a U-cup below the air cartridge assembly. You can discard the air cartridge assembly and the U-cup seal if there is one. Next, remove the lock nut using an 1.5 inch socket. Discard the lock nut. Next, remove the splined hub assembly and the journal spacer. You can discard the splined hub assembly and the journal spacer unless your journal spacer looks like this. If you have this large journal spacer, measure the height of it. If it is 1.285 inches, you can continue with your standard installation. If it measures 1.35 inches, you will need to use this red spacer during installation. Now remove the pulley from the shaft. We've used a press to remove the old bearings from the pulley. You can discard the old bearings, but be sure to save any bearing spacers. This is very important because the bearing spacers are necessary for the rebuilding and the operation of the fan clutch. But because they vary in size, they do not come in the HP rebuild kit. Now inspect the shaft and the inside of the pulley to ensure the bearings did not cause any damage to either surface. This is your first point of quality control. If you rebuild a flawed core, you will end up with a flawed fan clutch that might prematurely fail. If you determine the core is good, you can begin the rebuilding process. You should have the bracket, pulley, air chamber or nose cone, and the bearing spacers. Begin by cleaning the core components. Use a wire brush and parts cleaning solvent. Then install the new pulley bearings using a bearing press. Ensure to press the pulley bearings until they bottom out against the lip, but don't press so hard that you break the lip in the pulley. Also, be sure to install any bearing spacers you saved from the disassembly. These spacers go between the bearings. Next, install the pulley onto the bracket and shaft. Now install the journal spacer with the lip facing up. If during the disassembly you determined that you need to use the red spacer, install it on top of the journal spacer now. Next, install the splined hub assembly over the shaft. Now you can install the lock nut onto the shaft using an 1.5 inch socket. Torque the lock nut to 150 foot-pounds. Now we'll install the new friction material using a T25 Torx bit. If you're installing the 7500 HP, ensure that the hole in the backing plate is aligned with the tapped hole in the pulley. This is to support the come home feature designed in this style fan clutch. Torque the screws to 35 inch-pounds. Next, install the air cartridge assembly onto the shaft. Place a deep socket over the carbon tip and tap gently to ensure the carbon doesn't break and the assembly seats properly. Using a snap ring pliers, install the new snap ring over the air cartridge. Next, apply a coating of anti-seize over the splines on the splined hub assembly. Then place the floating return spring over the splined hub assembly. Apply a light coating of lubricant to the inside surface of the friction plate above the splines. Now, apply a light coating of O-ring lubricant to the large Viton O-ring or the O-ring groove in the friction plate and install the O-ring onto the friction plate. Take care not to roll or twist the O-ring. Install the face seal using a 5/8 socket and torque to 50 inch-pounds. Next, place the friction plate over the splined hub. Apply a light coating of O-ring lubricant to either the small O-ring or the O-ring groove in the air chamber. Then install the O-ring onto the air chamber. Be careful not to roll or twist the O-ring. Next, install the air chamber onto the friction plate. Then install the air chamber screws using a T30 Torx bit. Torque the screws to 180 inch-pounds. Finally, the last step in installing your HP kit is to check your work. Apply 90 to 120 psi of shop air to the fan clutch and ensure that the fan clutch engages and disengages properly. You can also apply a thin coat of soapy water over the bleed hole on the air chamber. The soapy water solution should make a bubble. If you make a bubble, your rebuilt fan clutch passes. If it does not make a bubble, or it makes a lot of bubbles, your clutch is not working correctly, and you should retrace your steps to make sure you installed everything correctly. That's it! You've successfully rebuilt your fan clutch using a Kitmaster's HP Complete Rebuild Kit. As always, if you have any questions, please call our customer service representatives at 800-810-9110. They'll be able to help you troubleshoot your fan clutch and solve your problem.